You are very welcome back to the Ogham Academy podcast. I am Lora O'Brien, MA, Irish Draoi, author and historian. And today we are diving into what the Ogham actually sounded like. Because here's the thing, Ogham isn't a language. Ogham was created to write one. And not just any language, but the earliest form of Irish, Gaeilge, that we have evidence for. So, let's get this straight from the start. I was going to say for once and for all, but actually I'm going to have to keep repeating this because it is a very, very common misconception. Ogham is a writing system, not a language in itself. It was invented to represent the sounds of what academics call primitive Irish. I prefer Proto-Irish, which is the oldest layer of our native tongue here in Ireland. That is the form of the language that was spoken from maybe the 2nd to the 6th century Common Era before it shifted into what we would now call Old Irish. Now, Irish is part of the Celtic branch of the Indo-European language family, just like Latin or Greek or Sanskrit. And one of the things that made it unique in Europe was that the Irish people had to learn Latin as a foreign language. We didn't inherit it through conquest like a lot of Roman provinces. The Romans never really got here apart from a small few forays. They were kind of scared of the Irish people and they didn't like our weather, basically. So we do have some Roman artefacts, with more being found all the time, in fairness to the archaeologists, but there was never really like massive Roman conquer or settlement here in Ireland. So what that meant is that our ancestors here on the island developed our own ways of thinking about how language worked, including inventing a script like Ogham. So what does that tell us? According to Professor David Stifter, Ogham most likely came out of that intellectual environment, this place where Irish speakers were learning Latin but also reflecting on their own language, its sounds, its structure, its identity. Now that's the academic perspective. I personally will just lay it out there. I believe Ogham is older. And there are Ogham inscriptions that would prove a pre-Christian use to the language. But unfortunately, the dating of this has to be linguistic because archaeologically speaking, you can't carbon date stone, and carbon dating would be the usual way to tell the age. So we have to use contextual dating rather than normal techniques or usual techniques for dating. So when the Ogham was actually first used is up for debate. Personally, I'm not going to be debating the academics on this, but I do have my personal beliefs on it, which is fine because they are rooted in reality rather than fantasy. Okay, cool. Ogham is clever. It was designed to match the sound system of this primitive or Proto-Irish pretty well. Not perfectly, but close enough to capture the spoken words of that time, as that was the point of it. So you see it in how certain consonants are separated, like the difference between Q and C. That reflects an older contrast between two different sounds that later emerged. So if you're looking at an early Ogham inscription and you see both letters used distinctly, that's a clue that you're dealing with something that was genuinely early. But here's the catch. The Irish language changed fast. Around the 6th century, so 500-ish Common Era, we get two big sound shifts. Apocope, which chopped off a lot of word endings, and syncope, which kind of messed with the vowels in the middle of words. Now these changes scrambled the neat system that Ogham was built on. So by the time Old Irish settled in, the script was kind of out of date in many ways, linguistically speaking. But that didn't stop people using it though. It just meant that it had to adapt. So in some later inscriptions and manuscripts, certainly, you'll see things get quite messy. Spelling conventions change, letters are reused for different sounds, and honestly, sometimes scribes, especially in the manuscript period, scribes just guessed, right? So how does that help us today? If you've ever tried to pronounce Ogham letters using modern Irish and found it confusing, that's why. The sound system has shifted over 1,500 years or more. Some letters represent sounds that just don't exist anymore in Gaeilge, in the Irish language. Take the letter Ngédal, for example. Originally representing the NG sound, like in song, that was a distinct phoneme in primitive or Proto-Irish, but in modern Irish, it's more of a positional thing. And Ifin, one of the later editions, the forfeather, was probably invented just to deal with sounds that didn't have a neat fit in the original set. So there is a set of extra letters, the forfeather, which is 6 extra letters. So even that breaks the structure of the, ACMA grouping of 4 sets of 5 letters. The forfeather have 6 letters. Professor Damien McManus warns us not to confuse the manuscript glosses, such as the Briharom, Kennings and commentary, with the older sound values. I know this is really confusing, but it is important to kind of lay it out. If you're struggling to follow this a little bit, maybe listen to the podcast again after this, maybe take some notes, because sometimes the hand-to-eye coordination and, taking a few notes, you don't have to write out the whole thing or anything. Just take some notes of stuff that you do understand or that you do get, or that are making sense to you. This is not you failing. It's give yourself some grace. Okay. So anyway, back to McManus, he said that later scribes sometimes imposed new ideas on an older system because they were trying to make sense of it for their own time. And we respect that, but it does cause complications, so we can't take everything at face value. And this is the issue when you're looking at anything historical, of course, as any of my fellow historians out there will understand. But for the average person who just wants a clear picture, unfortunately, the picture is slightly muddy and murky. So, what about meaning of Ogham? So in Ogham inscriptions, especially the ones carved on stone, the vast majority of what survives are personal names. Words like Maki, son of, or Muki, meaning a person of a particular tribe or kin group. You'll also see Anam, meaning name or sometimes soul, depending on the context. These are the building blocks of identity, so name, lineage, belonging. Interestingly, on the Ogham stones inscriptions, there's almost no grammar. There's no verbs, no sentences, just a name, maybe a father's name, sometimes a tribal name or a territorial reference. So while these early Ogham inscriptions don't give us poems or prayers, it does tell us how important identity was and relationship was, and how Irish people used writing to mark it. And think about the placement of these Ogham stones as well. They would often be placed on territory borders, between clans or tua. And I have often wondered, and actually quite believe, honestly, myself, that there was an ancestral magical element to it, where carving the names in these stones, putting them on the boundaries or the borders, was a guardian element to how these stones were being used. So that's why Ogham is so deeply tied to the Irish language, and indeed the Irish identity, which is what I did my whole master's thesis on, the place of Ogham in the development of Irish identity, later now than the period we're discussing here, but still. Not because it tells us how people spoke in full sentences, but because it shows us what mattered. If you're going to take the trouble to carve something into a big block of stone, obviously that's something that matters to you. It's important. So who you were, who you came from, who claimed you, who was your kin. So where does that leave us with modern spiritual practice? you've probably felt some of the pressure, the desire to get it right, especially if you're not a fluent speaker of Irish. And that's fair. We want to show respect. But here's the thing, even in the oldest layers, Ogham was already shifting. So there's no such thing as perfect pronunciation across all eras. What matters more is relationship, learning the meanings, speaking the words aloud with care, or the letter names aloud with care, honouring where they come from, and, where possible, connecting with the language itself. If you are writing a word in Ogham, for example, I really believe that it should be written in Irish. So you need to translate it from English into Irish. There's plenty of online resources available for that. Online Irish English dictionaries, etc. If you want to go older Irish, there's the electronic dictionary of Irish language. You can Google all of this, please do. Translate your English word into Irish. And again, you're not trying to create sentences. One word, a simple phrase maybe. That's how the Ogham has been used historically. If you're writing English in Ogham, you're kind of skipping over the whole tradition. So it's important that we understand that. And honestly, even learning a handful of words can root you. Irish Gaeilge is a beautiful, layered, expressive language, and Ogham is one of its oldest companions. So today's practice is speak the names. I want you to pick 5 Ogham letter names. Now we do again have a free guide, so go to ogham.academy/guide. That's ogham.academy/guide. You will get a simple pronunciation there. You will get the names spelled out. Pick one of the groupings. So it doesn't have to be the first one. The first one would be Be, Lish, Fern, Salia, Nian. But just look up how to pronounce them. You can go to aber.ie, so ABAIOR.ie, and you will find, you can type in any word and you can get it pronounced in any of the Irish dialects that you want to. We're living in the future, folks. You certainly don't need to be emailing me for translations or pronunciation help. All of that is available online, okay? Now, you have your 5 names. You've written them out. You know what they look like. You have a pronunciation guide for them. Say them out loud, slowly, 3 times each. Notice what your mouth does, where the rhythm falls, how each sound feels in your body. You're not just speaking letters, you're calling up centuries of Irish sound, shape, and meaning. You are connecting yourself. You are building relationship. So, your journal prompt then could be which Irish word, such as a letter name, kinship term, inscription formula, feels powerful to you. Write it down. Write about why. You can use Irish words written out in Ogham as words, as spells, little protection charms, as mantras, as, which is just a focus for meditation, as a positive affirmation, like all of these things are possible. Just pick one word that is important to you. Write it down. Write about why. Does it remind you of someone? Is it a name in your family? Is it a way you want to belong? Let that be your entry point to learning more of the language, even if it's only one word at a time. It's all progress. So that's us for today. Thanks for listening. Thank you for taking your time to speak your way into this tradition. One sound, one name, one practice at a time. And as always, if you want to see the Ogham letters while you learn them, you can download the free visual guide at ogham.academy/guide. It's handy, clear, and rooted in proper Irish sources. Next time, we're going to be looking at Briharom, the poetic kennings that hide these layered meanings in each fee or letter. You don't want to miss it, so tune in next week. So slán go fóill, and keep listening for the language of the ancestors. Slán.